Hello and welcome to Breaking Bad English with me, David. In this video, I'm going to explain to you how to take, speak and achieve a high level in the IELTS exams. Now, the IELTS exams is a short for the International English Language Testing System. And this exam is accepted by a wide range of universities around the world. The interesting thing about this exam is you can't really fail it. What it does is it assesses your level of English, and depending upon the university you are applying to, the level they require and is necessary for entry into their university. So, for example, if the university is looking for a level of English under the IELTS system at 6.5, that's what you need to do. Now, the exam tests your ability to speak fluently and clearly in English using a good pronunciation style with a wide range of vocabulary and grammar, suitable lexis, a reasonable speaking speed, and obviously answering the tasks or topics you need to speak about. Now, look, I have been teaching English for more than 23 years, and I have taught many students how to take this exam and pass it, so I have a lot of experience. Before you take the exam, you need to warm up, and by that I mean you need to speak to somebody for at least half an hour in English. If you can't find anybody, talk to yourself in a mirror if you want, but just walk around your home looking at things, describing what they are, but get used to speaking English. It's the same thing as if you were warming up for a sport. You need to warm up for an English exam as well. Now, the English exam takes something like 11 to 14 minutes in length, in time. Now, it depends how long your answers are. It's divided into 3 sections. And the first section asks you general questions about you and yourself, your opinions, your ideas, etc. But first of all, you will need to identify yourself, and you will need to show evidence of who you are, the person that's taking the exam. You might be taking the test online, or you might be taking the test in a test centre. It doesn't make any difference. The format of the exam is exactly the same. Before you start the exam, take some deep breaths, 3 or 4. Slow your heart rate down, okay? Relax. Imagine that you're speaking to a friend. Okay, relax and let it flow, let it flow. Just take it easy. Just try to continue speaking. Use plenty of ideas. Use the piece of paper when it's given to you to prepare. Write some notes. When you write notes, whatever topic you're talking about, think about the past, think about the present, think about the future. So it gives you the ability to talk in past tenses, present tenses, and future tenses. Okay, remember that, it's important. Let's talk about your hometown or village. What kind of place is it? Now, you need to think quickly. First of all, introduce the name of the place where you live and say something like this. I live in Karachi, which is a large city on the southern tip of Pakistan. It is actually on the Arabian Sea coast, and it has a huge population of approximately 20 million people. It is a very interesting city because it has a lot of things to do within it. The examiner will ask you another question. For example, what's the most interesting part of your town or city, of course? And you need to think quickly, and you could say, for example, I think the most interesting part of my city is the city centre itself. There are lots of things to do in the city centre, although over the years it has changed quite a lot. but there are particularly things for young people to do. For example, cinemas, theatres, sports centres, etc. And it's lively all day long and late into the evening as well. That's the end of that question, really. He will ask you further questions. For example, what kind of jobs do people do in your city? And you might say, well, because it's a hugely populated city, people do a full range of jobs, from cleaners to teachers to people working in factories to lawyers to doctors, all sorts of things. There are also many students in my city and people who are looking to improve themselves and get a higher level of education. There are lots of opportunities in my city, and I think in the future it can only get better and better. Okay, that brings you to the end of that question. He might then continue and say, let's move on and talk about accommodation. So tell me about the type of accommodation or the kind of accommodation you live in. Now, obviously you can describe your house or your flat, your apartment, and you should say something like this. I live in a medium-sized apartment with my parents and 2 sisters. The apartment is quite modern. It was built in the 1970s and it has full facilities, for example, running water, electricity and gas. Within our home, we have lots of electronics, we have a television, music playing systems, we have a very modern fitted kitchen. We in fact have 2 bathrooms and 3 bedrooms, and I feel very comfortable in my apartment. It has a balcony which gives excellent views over the city, and in the morning I can really enjoy the sun rising, and it is really, although it's in the centre of the city, quite peaceful. Okay, so you've given a very comprehensive answer there. How long have you lived there? So it's a present perfect question. You should say, I have lived there since I was born, which is now 20 years. Okay, so probably that would be enough. I haven't timed myself there, but it was probably between 4 and 5 minutes. All of these questions can be found online. You can search IELTS questions and you'll see there are lots and lots of different questions on various topics, the first part, the second part and the third part, and it's there for you to practice. Okay, so do your research before you take the exam. In part 2, it is your chance to speak alone for basically 3 to 4 minutes, and you will be given a type of task on a card. And on my card in front of me it says, describe something you own which is very important to you. So, okay, you can describe the thing that you want to talk about, but you should also mention, for example, where you got it from, how long you've had it, what you use it for, and explain why it is important to you. So that will take you 1 or 2 minutes. You have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say, and if necessary, write some notes. So, okay, there could be a few follow-up questions or rounding up questions at the end of it. So let's go back to the task. Describe something you own which is very important to you, and I'm going to do this off the top of my head, so I'm going to talk about my mobile phone. Now, this mobile phone is extremely important to me. I bought it about 6 months ago and I paid a reasonable amount of money for it. It wasn't the most expensive phone in the store, but it wasn't the cheapest either. The reason I chose this phone is that it has a lot of memory on it, and it has also a very nice camera and video system. So why is it important to me? Well, I use it for lots of different things. It has many functions. First of all, primarily, it is a telephone, of course, but it is also a smartphone, which means that I can connect to the internet and research information. I can prepare for school, I can use it for looking up information about films and books. I can communicate with my friends on it using things like Skype or other systems, and of course social media such as Instagram or Facebook and things like that. I think in today's world, mobile phones are important, not only as a form of communication, but as a safety device, because when we travel alone, we never know what could happen. For example, our car could break down, and if we're in the middle of nowhere, we need to contact somebody, and a mobile phone is an excellent device in order to do that. I bought it 6 months ago, and before I bought it, I did some research. So I didn't go into the shop and buy the first phone I saw. I actually looked online using my PC to research different types of mobile phones, and I actually narrowed it down to 2 or 3. I then went into the shop and I discussed it with the salesman in the shop, and he helped me decide which phone would be best for me and my required use. And I think I made a good decision. I don't know if phones will change much in the future. They might, but I can't really see at this point in time how they can get much better. Possibly they could have some type of 3D graphics on them, or they could have a faster connection or bigger screens, but that would mean holding a larger device in a bag and possibly not being able to put it into your pocket. And I don't think that would necessarily be a good thing. So I am quite happy with my mobile phone. And then the examiner might ask you some follow-up questions. For example, would it be easy to replace? And would it be easy to replace? Well, yes, certainly. There are lots of places I could buy a similar mobile phone, as well as online. So I don't think it would be difficult to find a similar, or if not better, type of phone. I intend to keep this phone for at least 2 to 3 years, whereas some of my friends only want to keep their phones for about a year because they constantly look to upgrade their devices, but that's not for me really. Okay, so I've brought you to the end of part 2. And that will be, again, 3 to 4 minutes speaking. I've probably spoken for more than that, but it gives you some idea of what you should say at the required level to get sort of a 7 or 8 level score in the IELTS exam. Okay, now on to part 3. So part 3 of the exam is 4 to 5 minutes in length, and the examiner will continue in a fairly similar topic to part 2, and he could say something like this. We've been talking about things we own, and I'd like to discuss with you 1 or 2 more general questions relating to this topic. First, let's consider values and the way they can change. In Pakistan, what kind of possessions do you think give status to people? So you've got to think quickly. Remember, he wants to talk about values and the way they can change. So you want to talk about the past, the present, and something in the future. So he asked you about, do you think some things, what kind of possessions give status to people? And you could say something like this. In the past, status was achieved by people who wore, for example, smart suits or dresses, whereas these days, status can be reflected in one's electronic possessions, for example, mobile phones or computers. Moreover, many people show status by the number of devices they own, not simply 1 or 2, but a large number of different devices. For example, video cameras, plasma televisions, smart TVs, etc. Okay, I don't necessarily think that possessions give people true status because they only reflect the fact that somebody could afford to buy them. Well, does that show that somebody is clever? In my opinion, it doesn't. But to some people, obviously, they think it does. Other people consider cars to be a status symbol, and that's true in many different societies and cultures. So the bigger the car, the more status someone has. But I don't agree with that either. I think a car is a means of transport, and as long as it can get you from A to B in a comfortable method and in a safe way, I think any type of car is suitable. I'm not particularly keen on gas guzzlers, which are very large cars which use lots of fuel, but to other people they give status. That's not me. He might ask you something else, for example, have things changed since your parents' time? And you might say again, for example, in my parents' youths, status was achieved by somebody's education, not their possessions. So the grades they achieved at school or the qualifications they achieved at university and when they graduated gave them the utmost respect and status, not the things they possessed. And that's different in today's society because very many young people think that status is all about possessions. In my opinion, I think that will change in the future, and it will go back to what our personal achievements are as our way of showing our status, not what we actually own. So that's my true belief. The examiner might ask you another question or two, and he might say, what do you think of this way of thinking? You don't think of it as a healthy way of thinking, or do you think this will change in the future? Well, I've mentioned how it's changed in the future, and I don't particularly think that owning possessions, objects, is a healthy way of thinking. So you can go on and explain that a bit more. He might finally say something like, let's talk about the role of advertising. Do you think advertising influences what people buy? And that's an interesting question to me. And I would say almost certainly advertising influences what somebody buys. Now, it may be some type of unconscious advertising, which is what is known as subliminal advertising, or it might be clear advertising on television or radio or on the internet. And it does have an effect upon us, even if we pay no heed to it at the time it appears. Something of that advert remains in our memory and in our brain. So whatever we can say about advertising, I think it does have an effect upon us. So when it comes to buying things or choosing universities or choosing a sports team to follow, the information we've heard about it and sometimes the advertising about it influences our decisions. Okay, now we're at the end of the exam. So that's what you need to achieve. You need to use a wide range of vocabulary. Try to use linking words such as, of course, and, because, the reason why, but also words such as nevertheless, even though, although, moreover, albeit. Okay, these types of words are linking devices and they can link one idea to another or a reason for something. We expect that. Don't rush your speaking, but speak at a reasonable speed as I have spoken in this video. Do what I've done. Practice it again and again. Watch this video more than once. Absorb the information I've given you and you will be successful in your exam. You can do it, but you must prepare thoroughly. The speaking exam is not a piece of cake, but with thorough preparation, everybody can achieve a high grade. Okay, so that's the end of the video. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Recommend my channel to your friends and family. And write any comments you have below the video. I'm very happy to answer them. Any questions you have, I've been teaching people many, many years. I've taught many people who have taken and achieved a high level in these exams. I know what I'm doing. So, I hope you liked it. I wish you lots of success and luck. Thank you. Goodbye from David.